Okay, everybody, I'm back for the beginning of segment two. Now, two of the things I wanted to cover during this, well, the first thing is I want to cover is actually what we did during the summer, late spring, early summer of 2024. We didn't go on as many trips as you might think. Things were pretty tight. I actually was working on a few projects here at the cemetery, so I was kind of focusing on that a lot. One of the uh, one of the last things that happened, I probably mentioned to everybody in the last broadcast, was Wendy Everett from Gals in the Graveyard. She came down and we did a little shoot in Cincinnati at Calvary Cemetery, and then United American, one of the African American cemeteries that's just it's in horrible shape, is what it is. But another thing that I did in March on St. Patrick's Day, actually, I went to visit my mother's grave at New St. Joe over in Cincinnati. And because of that, I kind of did this weird little trip where I was picking up Cincinnati people that we had been missing, or, famous graves that cemeteries we've been to dozens and dozens of times. We just never actually shot them there. So I was kind of snaking my way across the west side of Cincinnati. And that we got a lot of shots that day. Um, Next trip we did was the eclipse. Everybody, the whole world was involved in the eclipse. It seemed like my sister actually lived in the path of totalitarity or path of totality in Oxford, Ohio, which is right near Miami University. She They were in the past, so we went there. The next trip I did was a quick trip to Jeffersonville, Indiana. That was, again, this is related to business. Several of the trips that I took over the summer were relative to my friend Brian. Um, he is I may or may not have mentioned this to some of you. I'll tell you now. He designs professional kitchens, especially for like schools. So there are schools everywhere. So he often travels all over Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky to visit school boards and design these schools. So a lot of times I travel with him, because he may be traveling, no disrespect, Kentucky, but in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And he's happened to go there to design a school. So I go there with him while he's at the meetings. I'm at the local cemetery, that kind of thing. So, anyway, same kind of situation. He had to do a shoot. He had to visit a school in Jeffersonville, Indiana. And on the way, we stopped in Aurora, Indiana to get to see the new grave marker of Lonnie Mack, the legendary guitarist. And we also went out to Jeffersonville where I was able to shoot a few things to include a few Indiana governors and things I was after. Okay, the next trip that I did was around my birthday. This was at the end of April. Now, this was a really important trip. It was, we went to Pennsylvania to spend a couple of days. I wish we'd have had more time. It was terrible. But spend a couple of days with Robert Moscow from Moscow Cemetery Services and Repair. He for those of you that may or may not know Robert, he has like 30 years experience in as a conservationist. He's actually an actual conservationist, unlike a lot of people who pretend that they are. He actually has certifications, qualifications, education, and learned from the original masters of cemetery preservation. So a lot of people are pretenders. Robert's the real deal. And we went there to visit him. He lives in eastern Pennsylvania, and while we were on our way, I made plenty of stops along the way. We made a hit in Zanesville because, of course, living in Cincinnati, I'm traveling straight, almost not quite straight east, but to get to Pennsylvania. And I decided to make several stops along the way. So we hit Zanesville along the way because actually Charlotte had never been to Zanesville, even though I've been there twice. We stopped at the Grave Creek Mound in Moundsville, West Virginia, which I've been to, but she is not. And then we made like 9 stops along the way in West Virginia in places like Cameron and Limestone and Morgantown and doing some of that. So that's what we did on the way there. Now, another thing, while I was there, I was actually working on a cemetery project with Robert. So the second day, we were there was more about getting work done. I don't even know that I visited a cemetery other than the one we were working in. So, but on the way back, we traveled, once we left on our way, we traveled through Hanover, Pennsylvania, Taneytown, Frederick, Maryland, and Hagerstown, Maryland along the way. And while we did that, one of the one of the things I was most excited about was the Mount Olivet Cemetery that I stand corrected. I'm looking at the wrong one. No, it isn't. It is the Mount Olivet Cemetery in Frederick, Maryland. That is where Francis Scott Key was buried, and it was. I hate to say this in this way, but it was around the time the bridge got knocked over, so I was getting like extra extra people coming to visit the post I was making about Mount Olivet. So anyway, that being said, when we were coming back the last day, we were leaving Pennsylvania and we stopped in Monongahela. Yeah, that's right. I said it. Monongahela, Pennsylvania to visit their main cemetery. And then we finally visited the place that I've been after for years. But because it's on the exact opposite side of Ohio and I just haven't been there, we went to Steubenville, which is the home of the very first cemetery in Ohio, which is the Union Cemetery. So that was pretty cool. I was that was a super successful trip, and a lot of things were accomplished there for as the Necro tourist as well as professionally and other things of that nature. Okay, I did another shoot in Cincinnati, wrapping up some cemeteries I had been to before, but never really did appropriate shoots. It was kind of like hit and miss. So we went there to pick up some famous Cincinnatians and things of that nature. Then at the end of June, Brian went to Paducah, Kentucky. I was unable to go on this trip due to what I'll explain in a minute, but I had a doctor's appointment, and so he went to Paducah to. He was down there on business, and he scored John Scopes, the attorney from the Scopes monkey trial, and he also scored a governor down there. And he went to Metropolis, Illinois, across the river, which is like the home to Superman. It's kind of crazy stuff there. Um, okay, then the next trip we did was in July. Went to Wauseon, Ohio. That is like in the upper northwest corner of where Ohio and Michigan meet. And we were kind of not a lot of special stuff happened on that trip. We were just, hitting all the regional cemeteries, hitting some local famous people. But the one main thing I was able to accomplish on the way back from that trip, we stopped at Woodlawn in Lima, Ohio. And the people that run that place have been after me for years to make a stop there. So I finally was able to get that accomplished. Now, one of the last trips we made was we went to Danville, Kentucky, where we went to the Bluegrass. On the way, we went to the Bluegrass Memorial Garden, which was very cool because two people that were recently buried since I had been there about 8 years ago was the actor Harry Dean Stanton. If you don't know who he is, look him up. You know exactly who he is. You know him from Aliens or Pretty in Pink, or you know him in lots of stuff. You know this dude. He's been in everything. And then we made some stops at Lexington Cemetery. We went to a Shakertown, which was pretty cool. They had a cool local cemetery. And then we went down to Danville and visited Bellevue Cemetery, which was the main cemetery there, which is definitely, if you're in anywhere near Danville, it's definitely worth going to that cemetery. I had been there years ago, but I didn't. Actually, it was prior to when I started shooting famous graves, if you can believe that. So I only had aesthetics photos. I had no photos at all from the beauty of the cemetery. Okay, so that happened on the 10th of August. We went back down to Lexington just 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact, and we it was this was just a 1 day overnight trip. We hit the cities of Versailles, Kentucky, as well as Midway, Kentucky. And hey, check this out: Midway, Kentucky is like midway between Frankfurt and Lexington. Isn't that amazing that it's midway? Anyway, okay, that wraps up the shoots that we did. Okay, so that, like I just said, that pretty much wraps up what we visited. And I so okay, here's what was weird, and this is what led me to the story I'm going to share with you guys right now, which is I don't know if it's too personal or it just is what it is. I'm not a sensitive guy. I used to be a medic in the army. I deal with a lot of things as is. Um, so the season started early this year. We really started having good weather like in March. So I mean, I was cutting grass in March, twice in March. That which is crazy. I mean, the first 2 years I wasn't really seriously cutting grass till April. So I noticed at the beginning of the year. Okay, now, admittedly, over the winter, I worked on a lot of, I was writing on my book. I was doing a lot of paperwork for the cemetery. I was getting, I was explaining to you earlier, procedures and policies and stuff. When I go through my work later, I compile all that information over the winter because I don't do, I still have work to do here, but I just don't do as much. So, I noticed by like around April or May, I just couldn't do anything, man. I was like, I couldn't breathe. And it was weird because I would work, things that I had been doing, which now in my third season, there was no reason why these things should be taxing me like they were. And I didn't understand it because my cardio is usually pretty good. I mean, if you guys have known me for the last 10 years, I've, walked over 1,000+ cemeteries. I cruise through a cemetery. I've always had good cardio my entire life. So I didn't understand why doing things just like taking a wheelbarrow full of dirt up 2 rows was wiping me out. So I go to the doctor. I've been with the same doctor for 30 years. He reasonably knows me pretty well. And for my age, mid 50s guy, I've usually been in pretty good shape. And he's actually commented on that over the years that like everybody, I got a couple of health issues, but most of my stuff is pretty good. So I asked him about this, and nothing's pointed to anything was going on. So this was, I guess, I went to see him in late May, and he set up to start having me have some tests done to see what, because I thought for sure it was my heart. I don't know why. It was definitely in my thoughts. I'd occasionally been having pains in my chest, and so I really suspected it was going to be heart related. So during the month of June, I started doing this barrage of tests that had to do with heart related stuff. I was getting, EKGs and stress tests and all this stuff. And it was two things were happening. Number one, during June, it was starting to, the appointments, because they were finding nothing out, were starting to eat into my time, which in June and July, I got to be cutting grass constantly. So I'm at these doctor's appointments that are taking all day, and every one of these appointments is turning out the results are just nothing. So finally, in late June, because I used to be a smoker, I quit smoking about 7, 8 years ago. I they the where I go, my doctor's associated with University of Cincinnati Hospital, and University of Cincinnati has this screening program that has to do with ex-smokers, and they wanted to know if I would just go ahead and get a lung screen in that program. And when they did, that's when they found out what the problem was. I have a tumor on my lung. Yeah, a cancerous tumor on my lung. So it's the reason why I couldn't breathe when I was working, because when I exert myself, I'm one of my lungs is partially blocked. So now this makes sense. Pardon me while I cough. So, of course, this makes sense because I used to smoke and it had been there, but nobody thought this was lung related because I was convinced that it was my heart. So, all the tests were heart related. So, now the whole thing changed. Now, because of this, I am now at the UC Cancer, the Barrett Cancer Center, being treated with chemical or chemo and immunotherapy to hopefully basically where this thing is, if you guys can envision this, like where your lung, the branches come off of your, into your individual lungs. One of the tumors, like right on the pulmonary artery. So they're hoping that they can either A, shrink the tumor completely with therapy. That's a possibility, probably not likely. Or at least shrink it enough so it'll be much easier for them to remove it off the pulmonary artery. That's also a possibility. If they can't do any of the above, then they're going to end up removing my left lung in partial or possibly completely. So basically, that's what's going on. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of things with the Necrotourist have been falling to the wayside. I'll get back to that in a second. But I did this barrage of tests in July. I was just constantly at the doctor while they were figuring out what was going on. And I was getting behind at the cemetery at the same time. Now, because I'm having a physical problem, getting behind is making it even worse. Then we get into this hot streak. And I'm telling you, we had in July, we just had tons of 90-degree days and I can't breathe. And then August comes and we have another like 20 hot 90-degree days. And this stuff is just piling up on me. And, what was going on with the Necrotourist, while it's my priority, it's also not my priority. So a lot of what's been going on with the Facebook pages and the website itself and things. I haven't been, it's not that I've been purposely neglecting people. I probably got 3,000 people in queue trying to just join our Cemeteries of Europe group. But so I'm just telling everybody, I'm, you know, I'm not, I don't know how hopeful I am about my prognosis. It seems to be okay. I got to do what I got to do no matter what. And I'm a good soldier. I'm gonna soldier through it and do what I have to do. But I'm telling you, I am 1 week into chemo, and I'll tell you, the first week has not been fun. um yeah, the first couple of days were super rough. Over the weekend, man, I was really really sick. I was gonna go to the hospital sick. But I know better than to go to the hospital on the weekend. That's pointless unless you just want to lay in a bed. But anyway, so basically what's going to happen as far as everybody goes, here's what's happening personally. I received my first treatment September 16th. I'm going to be receiving another treatment. Let me think, since I got the calendar right here. I'll take a look. I have my next treatment after that that'll be scheduled on Monday, the 7th of October. Then I will have another one scheduled on October the 28th. So, yeah, I have the four treatments that'll be doing that. And then after that, they'll be making the evaluation and prognosis. And, there's a good possibility, unless this shrinks it down, that I'll be going into surgery over the winter. So, I don't know. I mean, they say that, people are just fine with one lung, and it is what it is. I only find this is the greatest irony because of all the illnesses in my life. When I was younger, I used to smoke like crazy, man. I'm gonna tell you all, 2.5 packs a day for 30 years. I started when I was like 19, smoked till I was 50. And I always used to say, if I get lung cancer, there's nobody to blame but myself. So don't have any pity for me. So I'm not asking anybody to have any pity for me. I'm just making you aware of what's going on with my physical limitations, because it's been to some degree affecting my job. Not completely, but I now know how to work around it. And well, during treatment, that's completely different. I don't know how this treatment's going to go. So that's sort of affected me. Luckily, my sons have been coming over to help. As a matter of fact, they're coming over today to do some trimming. So yeah, because this is physically taxing me, and I haven't even been through a whole 3 week cycle yet, so I don't even know what how each cycle is going to affect me. I hope as I go through a week, it will continue to get better each week. When I'm in that 3 week process, because I already know that the first week is going to be not fun, man. Yeah, it was not fun. That's all I'm going to say. Um, so yeah, several things that we've been working on have been, put in delay, but due to this circumstance, here in a few minutes, I'm going to come back and tell you about some of the things that are coming up with like the fall schedule and the Boy Scouts project, television appearances, and so much more. So I appreciate you listening to this portion, and I'll be back shortly with the next segment.